Hello there, good evening and welcome to another episode of Business Focus here on TV3 with me, Michael Obodu. Coming up tonight on the show, the Cedi's strong appreciation against major currencies has prompted questions about its economic impact and the sustainability of the trend. Today, we'll explore the dynamics surrounding the local currency's appreciation. Later on the show, government has been urged to bolster public transport amid some drivers ignoring a 15% reduction directive from the Ghana Private Road Transport Union, GPRTU, as fuel prices continue to fall. Welcome to the show. This is Business Focus. We are live on 3news.com for all our social media handles and on DSTV channel 279. My name is Michael Obodu. Now, Business Focus is sponsored by EcoBank and Telecel. We'll be taking a quick break, but before that, every day people face different emergencies: police emergencies, fire emergency, medical emergency, you name it. But many Ghanaians don't know their emergency numbers. Well, here is one you would want to always remember: *770#. Yes, *770# is the new EcoBank money emergency number. *770# gives you instant access to loans, fund transfer, utility payments, airtime and data purchases, and so much more, even without data. So there's no need to panic when you find yourself in any money emergency. EcoBank will always come to your rescue. Dial *770# now for solutions to your money emergencies. EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank. We'll go for a quick break. When we come back, we'll delve into our topic for today. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Business Focus. Before we delve into the conversation for today, we'll bring you updates from the currency and the commodities market. Now, on the forex market, based on the BOG rates coming in today, the dollar is selling at 10.94 and will be bought from you at 10.95. The pound is going for 14.77 buying, and the euro at 12.41. And also we'll turn now to the commodities market, where across the board we are seeing prices fall. The price of crude oil is down by 0.26% to selling at $64.61 per barrel. Gold also has lost some $19.56. It's trading at $3,307 per ounce. Cocoa also is down by some $514. It's trading at $9,764 per ton. And these are also quite interesting updates coming out there, and especially now that we are situating the conversation about the appreciation of the local currency. What do these developments mean, especially for the revenue side of government? We'll explore that as part of the conversation. The T-bills market also, we see the yield for 91-day bills now down from 15.1%, now trading at 14.92%. You see government still continuing with its rate cuts. 182 days is now at 15.58. 364 also now down from 16.78 to 16%. Shows you that the government is still continuing on its frugal approach to cutting down on its expenditure. So we'll delve now straight into our conversation on the performance of the local currency. We've seen appreciation by over 20% year to date. Is this growth trajectory sustainable, and what does this really mean for the economy in general? Now, Ghana's Cedi has recently demonstrated a notable appreciation against major international currencies, sparking discussions about its sustainability and broader economic impact. The local currency has seen significant gains, with the Bank of Ghana reporting 24.1% year-to-date appreciation against the dollar as of May 2025. In studio with me is finance and tax expert and head of finance at Melbourne Capital, Nelson Kujo Kwagbeji. Also joining us via Zoom is financial economist and fellow of the Africa Policy Lens, APL, Dr. Eric Boache Yadom. Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so Doc, thank you too for joining us. I'm sure you're on the line there. So we'll quickly look at the graph on how the Cedi has performed year to date. We see the slowdown relatively of the rate of depreciation. We see some depreciation, negative depreciation, of course, of 3.9%, went up a bit slightly to 5.3%, staggered, maintained till March 25, 5.3%. However, from there, we saw the Cedi begin to pick up quickly, rapidly. I don't know how much of a record this is really, especially in the performance of the currency over the years, but quite interesting there. From between March and May, we see a 3.9% increase. That growth is part of what gave us the accolade of the best performing currency for April 2025 across the globe. But as we speak now, it's standing at 24.1%. Some are speculating that we should be preparing to hold that title for another month running. And that's basically how the currency has performed over the period. Next, we'll go now to how we fared with exports. It's interesting to note that as we speak at the moment, gold accounts for over 50% of our total exports for this year so far, and that over 56% is giving us over $5 billion worth of forex in the country since the start of the year. Cocoa is also trailing with about $1.8 billion having come from there. Crude oil is at 972 million, and the others put together will give you about 1.2 billion. So in all, our total exports have brought us close to over $9 billion, actually. And these are quite interesting numbers that are coming in and have contributed to where we find ourselves in as a country so far. So we'll come in studio now and speak to Nelson. Some very interesting numbers, I'm sure these are part of what is contributing to where we are now as a country. But what are your initial thoughts, first of all?
Well, I think that, as you rightly indicated, our traditional export has, contributed significantly towards the reserve that we are having. Data released by the Bank of Ghana shows that our total gross international reserves stood at $10.7 billion dollars, which is 4.7 months of import cover. So I think it is this, exports that are contributing significantly towards the reserve that we are building. Not only our traditional export, but I also think remittances are also, playing a significant role. There again, government-owned fiscal policy and monetary policy are also adding up, are also supporting the traditional export, and that is what is accumulating to give us about $10.7 billion in terms of reserve, which represent, 4.7 months of import cover.
And it's interesting that I gather that BDCs are getting access to the forex they need, and there's almost no speculation at the moment on the market because of the availability of forex.
Yes, so this is a market that we are operating in. And once it's a market, there is always the issue of demand and supply. And once supply far outweighs demand, technically we expect prices to come down. As it stands now, Bank of Ghana is having enough forex to meet the demands of those who actually need them for their international business transactions.
Interesting. Dr. Bache-Yajohn, thank you also for joining us. Your initial comments on how the Cedi has fared so far, are you impressed?
Yes, I think there's something that the government is probably getting it right in terms of the short-term stability that we are enjoying in this last 3 months. Making sure that we have a sufficient dollars when it's needed. Injecting over $800 million dollars into the system for the past 4 months, and we're expecting that this period, the government will inject over $120 million for BDCs to be able to buy the crude which are needed. And which bring us to around about $1 billion within this 5 months of 2025. So as far as these measures, government is able to maintain or sustain these measures in injecting the dollars, especially also like my colleague rightly mentioned, ensuring that we're able to sell, to be able to, our goal to generate these reserves to cushion what has already been built. But we have to come to the point where we have to agree the required gold reserve we have in order to keep sustaining or supporting our dollar activities. Currently we are doing around 31 tons. If we don't build it up and it depleted, and not only depleted, we can even maintain it as it is. But if gold prices start falling, it means that obviously our reserve will also be falling. So we know that historically gold has done well, but global factors are unpredictable. Last year, around the 30 million, around 30 tons was giving us a reserve lower than what we have now, with the same reserve not going down. So the value of the dollar on the global market will play a significant role in terms of getting the needed dollars, selling our gold and getting the needed dollars and injecting it. So in this short term, I think that it is a good sign, but my concern is how sustainable it will be going into the future.
And the issue of sustainability, really, from where you sit, do you see government being able to maintain the momentum of the appreciation that we've seen so far, or it's too early to call?
So it is a trade-off that if you decide to invest heavily in building reserve and you are unable to reduce the demand for dollar and you still run an import-driven economy, at a point, if we start buying goods or government start paying contractors and contractors are demanding for the dollar, the demand side will go up. We should also understand that in the early years of this particular administration, many projects that government need to fund, the funds are yet to be released, and contractors are waiting to be paid so that they can go back to site, or government project will continue. all these things are done and the demand side start going up, if government is unable to provide the needed funds, like you mentioned, that BDCs will be provided the needed funds to be able to buy the crude. If all other business people or contractors are also provided the funds and they start buying the dollar, then there's going to be pressure on government to be able to provide over, we are talking about quarterly around $800 million to be injected in the economy. If government is unable to provide the supply side to meet the demand side, then we are going to have a bit of a difficulty. You see, the sharp appreciation of the cedi in the past 2 months, especially April and May, gives concern about the sustainability of it. And in a normal economic curve, if the rise is too steep, as we see, then there's a likelihood that there can also be a steep fall. If we look at the rate of inflation, inflation is gradually going on a decline. In that case, you can see that the fundamentals of inflation is being set to be sustainable. But the steep rise in the cedi appreciation for the past 2 months or 3 months should give us a concern that if we are unable to address the fundamentals to make sure that it is sustainable, then we should be expecting a steep fall as well. And when I say fundamentals, you see, we should be clear that, yes, government fiscal policies are working, but they are working at the back of government yet to commit so much to their promises, especially in last year campaign promises. So if we start spending in your campaign promises as in supporting industries, 24-hour economy, if all these projects start rolling out, then you are going to the expenditure cuts that you are doing, especially with this year, the greater part of this year, will not be the same as going to 2026. Because we shouldn't forget that we run a 4-year cycle as a political economy and also as economic economy. So every policy that government intends to bring, you should try to situate it within this context. We are almost done with the half of the year, and we have 3.5 years to go. So government, in an attempt to achieve those policies, will start rolling in those policies, which comes with government spending. And if the fundamentals are not addressed, the demand for the dollar will go up, and we'll be expecting a steep depreciation of the cedi.
Okay. Now, I'll come back to you shortly, because some have also argued that maybe what we are seeing right now is actually the true state of the currency or the local currency, and probably all that we've been experiencing over the past couple of years may have all been speculation-led. And now the things are actually beginning to reset. But then I'll come to you, Nelson. For you, do you think this is even sustainable in the first place?
Yes, I think this is sustainable. Within the short term, it is sustainable. From the medium to long term, it is also sustainable. My colleague mentioned the fact that there should be a balance between the gold reserve and the forex reserve. Gold is naturally resistant to external shocks and other geopolitical, issues. And so, for you to have a certain amount of gold reserve and also have a certain amount of forex reserve will play out in sustaining, the appreciation that we are currently witnessing. He also made mention of the fact that currently the government seems to be operating what you call a contractionary economic policy, where government is sort of shying away from spending. Currently, the payables of government are being audited. Once the payables are audited, they are certified by whoever is auditing them. Government needs to start paying those contractors and the rest. Government will also start paying their debt, servicing their debt from July 2025. And so once these outflows, set in, we don't expect the cedi to continue appreciate. In any case, the appreciation of a cedi or depreciation is not an event. It goes up and it comes down. It goes up and it comes down. And so what I expect government to do within the short term, now that the traditional export prices are good, is to build enough reserve within the short term and also leverage on the activities and then operations of the gold board to have enough gold reserve so that when the time comes for us to pay contractors, the time comes for us to service our debt, we may have enough foreign currency to pay off, and that may not derail the gains that we have made even as at now.
And you don't think that when government starts making the payments... Doc, you want to respond to that?
Yes, if I may.
Okay.
Yes, the gold value usually is pegged to the dollar. So if we look at the history, anytime dollar is doing well, the gold is not doing well. You can look at it for the past 20 years. Anytime gold is doing well, there's a switch, a flip between the gold and the dollar.
To be clear, you mean there's an inverse relationship? There's
an inverse relationship. If you look at how they run, if you model it over the past 20 years or so, you can see there's an inverse relationship between the two. And you know that the reason why we store this gold reserve is to sell it in order to inject more dollars into the system.
Yeah.
I mean, and you could see that last year, a gold reserve of around, let's say, 30 tons was giving us around $2.3 billion.
Yeah.
The same gold reserve today is giving us about $3.6 billion. So we must be careful of which side of the devil we want to choose. And if you don't set the fundamentals, see, my focus is on how we'll be able to reduce the demand side by strengthening local industries to produce goods that we will normally have to purchase outside. Because if the demand side is not checked, there is no amount of dollars you will put into the system that will be enough. Because importers, contractors will demand more as far as they can get to buy more dollars to get the product into the country. So this is a good time for us to have our import substitution by trying to find out products and goods that we need to strengthen local industries to produce. If we don't do that and we keep injecting the dollars into the system, there will be a point to which we can inject. And at that point, the pressure on the cedi and the speculation that we are trying to avoid will start setting in, and the demand is going to be high.
Okay. Well, at least this government says it has a big push agenda and is hoping to engage on some major infrastructure and local production initiatives. We'll see how all of that pans out, just as you said, over the next 3.5 years before their tenure ends. But we'll move the conversation further. You know, last week there have been some reports and projections on how the currency will end the year. ABSA is projecting about 14 cedis to the dollar by the end of the year. Fitch is projecting a little over 15 cedis to the dollar. Nelson, do you agree with these projections?
Well, I don't really know the basis upon which they are making these projections. Well, I think I overheard the Fitch guy saying that because government is yet to start, paying contractors and servicing our debt, once we get to that side, the trend will reverse sharply. But I think that the politics of foreign currency in this country is a huge one. No government will make such a gain, reducing it from about 16% to about 11%, and then sit aloof and allow the exchange rate to move from 11 or whichever percentage to 14 or 15 by the close of the year.
But some will argue that we've seen that before. We've seen the currency depreciate from about 6, 8 cedis to 12, and even worse within months.
Yes.
So it's not new.
Well, you may say so, but we are just about finishing the second quarter, and we'll be left with 6 months more to go. If government is able to sustain the momentum that we have now, as Doc said, and work on the supply side of issues, I don't think we will be hitting 14 Ghana cedis by the end of the year. In fact, per our own research that we have done, the cedi may be the dollar may be trading around between the band of 11 to 12 Ghana cedis by the end of the year.
11 to 12.
Yes, but it will not go beyond 12 Ghana cedis. As I said, in spite of the organic nature of the appreciation of the cedi, the politics aspect of it is also huge. And so I don't expect the government to sit aloof, to allow all the gains that we have made as a country to be eroded by sending the exchange rate. This is actually the first time in the history of Ghana that GPRTU and GUTA are calling on their members to even reduce prices. Unprecedented. And so I don't think government will sit aloof for the exchange rate to move from 11 to 12 to 13 to 14 and even to 15 Ghana cedis by the close of the year. Personally, I don't think so. However, we may be situated within the band of 11 Ghana cedis to 12 Ghana cedis by the close of the year.
Interesting one over there. Doc, where do you sit? 14, 15 or still with Nelson's 11, 12?
Yes, I think I agree with Nelson that the government, for political reasons, will not allow the exchange rate to go beyond about 12 cedis to $1. And it is next year that we'll be having a challenging times. But this year, I am very optimistic that it won't get to the prediction of about 14 to 15. And I think, you see, Michael, we've had this situation before. You remember 2017 where there was Kenke Party, the city has been arrested and people go jubilating. No, we've been here before. This is not the first time that we've had some level of stability and even appreciation of the city. What I want the government to focus on is to address the fundamentals and not doing window dressing by injecting more dollars into the system. Addressing the fundamentals means that support industries so that you can also cure the demand side. If you don't cure the demand side and the demand side start coming in, then it will dismantle all your policies and you may not be able to focus to do what you're supposed to be doing. So I think that this year the government will try as much as possible and also to get public sympathy and also to get public confidence that the government is able to manage the economy and everybody is watching the cedi-dollar relationship. So if I were in the government shoe, I think I would do everything possible to tame it.
So you agree with the 11-12 band?
Yes, I agree.
And to add to what Doc has said, I think if you look at some of the policies that government is implementing currently, those policies will be yielding the needed results from medium to long term. Number one, you hear the Minister of Foreign Affairs these days talking about economic and financial diplomacy. So it means that the government is shifting its attention from the normal diplomatic things that we do to a more economic and financial focused diplomatic mission, which means that we may be expecting more foreign direct investment into the country. You will also realize that recently the president launched the Accelerated Export Development Committee, which is supposed to, as it were, increase our non-traditional export from $5.3 billion to about $10 billion by 2030. You also realize that in terms of our fiscal policies, the government is trying to, shy away from spending, as it stands now. So going into the medium to long term, when this economic diplomacy, foreign direct investment, diversifying the export base of our countries are yielding the result, then BOG does not need to inject fresh dollars into the economy. Even the 24-hour economy policy, which is supposed to capacitate the productive sectors of the economy by value addition, may also be doing some exportation, and that will also bring it. So from the medium to long term, I expect this, the exchange rate to be what? Sustained. And there's no way, we'll go back to where we are coming from. It's practically impossible for political reasons.
For political reasons. Okay, yes. At least the disclaimer is important. But it's interesting that talking about the non-traditional exports, the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry and Agribusiness hinted that there were plans to almost double last year's target of about 3 billion to about 6 billion by close of this year. So, that ties into what you were saying. Some expected additional inflows, which will help probably stabilize the economy. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. In studio with me was Head of Finance at Melbourne Capital, Nelson Kujo Kwagbeji, and also joining us via Zoom, UPSA financial economist, Dr. Eric Boakye. We'll go for a quick break. When we come back, we'll bring you more. Stay tuned. This is Business Focus. Welcome back. This is Business Focus here on TV3. Now, calls have heightened for road transport operators in Ghana to reduce fares as directed by the Ghana Private Road Transport Union, GPRTU. Now, despite falling fuel prices, some commercial drivers are reportedly refusing to comply with a 15% fare cut. Cut International calls for non-compliant drivers to be deregistered and banned, warning their actions are exploitative. Now, the move aims to ensure commuters benefit from lower costs, restoring fairness in daily transport expenditure. But first off, we went to the streets and spoke to commuters on how the whole reduction has fared for them since Saturday and what the level of compliance has been so far.
The fares has been reduced. It used to be 6 cedi 50 pesos, but now we take 5 cedi 50 pesos. We have reduced it. Our concern is when prices of fuel goes up, we are not allowed to increase the transport fares immediately, but we are forced to reduce transport fares when fuel prices reduce.
The problem at hand is right now we have heard that the government has reduced the fuel prices, and we thank him for that. But the problem that we the passengers are having now is that some of we the passengers, we have the price list mostly on our phones. Okay, fine. So like we've been taking car. Sometimes when you take a car, you know that from this area to this destination has been reduced. But some of the drivers are saying that they have not heard of price reduction, though the price of the fuel has gone down, but the transportation has not been reduced.
So those were some commuters and drivers, and mixed reactions there with the directive for a reduction in transport fares by some 15%. However, we do know that the compliance level has been questionable in some parts of the country. We understand that in the Ashanti region, for instance, there has been stiff opposition to this directive. But we will speak to the Director for Cut International for West Africa, Dr. Kusi Adomako, to pick his thoughts on how all of this has fared. Doc, Council, rather, thank you so much for joining us. Now, tell us, how do you feel about this development with the transport fares reduction so far?
The reduction in the transport fares was met with a sense of euphoria because we live in a nation whereby prices never come down. So anytime prices come down, it's more like an eclipse of the sun that happens one in every 100 years. And so we celebrated it with all the joy and that it deserved. However, over the past 48 hours, we've realized that some drivers are not allowing the increment to take effect, and they are giving whole sort of reasons. And they have the effrontery to do this because they say that they are the one who own their cars. They took loans to buy the cars. But they also forget that they are also rendering public services and that these services are also regulated by a regulatory regime. And if the prices of fuel has consistently been going down, it is fair and reasonable that you also adjust this prices so that consumers can have a reprieve. You can't shift the goalpost to say that fuel is not the only cost driver for running a vehicle. I think that is very wrong in the sense that everybody knows we don't need a particular or one driver union to tell us that there are other variables. Of course, the car cost is the cost of the vehicle is one, the spare parts is one, and then also fuel and other parts. But the fuel, when you buy a car, you buy the car once. If you buy a spare part, you don't buy spare part every day. But the fuel is the most important running cost on a daily basis. And so if the cost of fuel has gone down and the association has recommended a 15% reduction in prices, it is fair that businesses comply. And these same drivers who are not permitting the prices to fall so that consumers will benefit, they would also be expecting other service providers like PURC and others to also reduce their prices. I think it is very wrong.
All right, so we have on the phone line now Alhaji Abbas Imoro. He's the PRO for GPR2. Alhaji, thank you so much for your time. You gave a directive, but it looks like your members are not following through with it. What is the challenge? Alhaji Abbas.
Hello.
Yeah, Alhaji, thank you for joining us. You were here on the show last week. You told us we're happy to hear that 15% drop in transport fares effective Saturday. But it appears that some of your members are not complying with this directive. What is the challenge?
Yes, we also have the same report. And it's just unfortunate that each time we increase lorry fares, immediately every driver embraces it and starts working with it immediately. But here in the case of reduction, say some are feeling reluctant because they are going to lose some few coins. But that shouldn't have been the case. I always want to stick with some facts. In 2022, we stood on fuel and increased lorry fare. It was only fuel among all the components that were using, which went up to some extent that we stood on it, increased lorry fares. Not long after the increment, we started declining. It declined up to some stage that we reduced lorry fares by 15.3%. That was in 2022, somewhere in December. So I think the reason why some of our drivers are saying yes, lorry fares have been spare parts have not been reduced. Spare parts have not been reduced. It is only fuel, so there's no justification in reducing lorry fares. It is wrong. That is one of the components we use to run transport. So any of the components, I quite remember also there was a year with increased lorry fares due to high cost of living. We also stood on high cost of living and we increased lorry fares. I quite remember one of the increments we made. So when anybody says spare parts have not been taken, so on fuel alone, there's no justification on that. So they should stop saying that. And we are still pleading with them that with the explanation that each time we meet with the transport ministry, then the issue becomes law for all of us to comply.
Okay.
I can't remember any time we come up with support assessment. We've been telling our drivers, if a passenger sits in your vehicle and misbehaves, please don't attack him. Just send him to the police station and make a report over there. So if they joke with this era, the situation in which we are, the law finally has to take its course so that we live happily.
All right. So clearly, GPR2 condemns the action of drivers who are not complying with this directive. Clear?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Alhaji Abbas Imoro. He's the PRO for GPR2. But back to you, Dr. Apia Kusi Adumakun. I'm sure you've heard what Alhaji has to say, but in your opinion, what do you say is the way forward in addressing this problem?
Way that we can do this thing is that if we were to have, say, a public transport system like Ayalulu or the Metro Mass Transit, and they had multiple buses in the city, and they have also reduced their prices, that alone can also compel the drivers to also reduce the prices. So we need to have the involvement of government in the rendering of public transportation. When you travel abroad, and even most cities across Africa, public transport, the transport that we call the mass transit are are run by the city to go to land.
All right, Mr. Kwesi Adumakun, your point is well noted. Government must play active role in public transport service delivery to give an option and an alternative for consumers. Of course, that would affect demand and also force prices to fall. But we also have from the Ashanti region, the bureau chief for the area, Evans. Evans, our colleague from the Ashanti region, Evans Inkum, bringing us updates from the Ashanti region. Evans, thank you so much for joining us. Your region seems not to be budging with this 15% reduction in transport fares. What's happening?
Well, absolutely. So you could call it a wholesale, rejection as far as especially intra-transport movements is concerned. For intercity, the case is different. But when it comes to intra-transport movement, that is commercial transport movement, that is where the problem is. They are not going by the directive. And they've been, blaming it on several, concerns or issues. Now they are talking about bar road network. Some are also talking about the fact that if you go to the market centers, prices of goods have not been reduced, and for that matter, they are also not ready to do that. If government wants them to abide by the directive, then markets should also, they also want to see that change in narrative happening in the market centers before they also go by it. So exactly what is happening just
they seem to forget that they play a role in the cost build-up of products on the market, because if transport fares are high, prices will be high.
Well, absolutely. It is also something that they also not abet, or they are betting their minds to. These are conservative characters, if I should put it that way. They believe that it should have some level of rippling effect, and it should cut across every sphere of the economic life. So if they've been asked to reduce prices or, transport fares, then they also want to see same happening in the market centers. Well, some passengers whom have been engaged, are not happy about the reasons being given by the drivers, because consistently they have also increased transport fares. They do not blame it on the fact that, commodities in the market have seen some level of a show in terms of pricing. Now there's an opportunity for them to also reduce it because of the changes in the prices of petroleum. They are simply not ready to do that.
Interesting. We spoke to Alhaji Abbas Imoro. He's a PRO for GPRT, and he has strongly condemned the move by these drivers who are not complying with the directive. We'll see how things pan out in the next couple of days. But Evans, thank you so much for joining us. That's the bureau chief for the Ashanti region, Evans Inkum, joining us. But I still have in studio finance and tax expert Nelson Kujo Kwagbeji. Nelson, it's quite interesting how these things are panning out, and we all know how critical cost of transportation feeds into inflation. And
exactly. So that is exactly what I wanted to say, that anytime Ghana Statistical Service is computing the monthly variation in prices or inflation, they factor in transport, cost. And so to the extent that the prices at the pumps have reduced, to the extent that prices have generally reduced within the country, I think it is only economically prudent and advisable for the drivers to actually reduce the price of their transport fares. However, I think that the leadership of GPRTU must engage with the drivers. Engagement is always good. The first gentleman you interviewed said that spare parts, the prices of spare parts have not been reduced. So why are they asking them to reduce the prices of transport fares? So I think there needs to be more engagement between the drivers on one part, the government, and the leadership of the drivers in order to come to an amicable solution to the price reduction.
Thank you so much. It's quite interesting that this is coming from the Ashanti region, where we know spare parts are cheaper there than even in Accra. But we'll see how all of this pans out the next couple of days at least. The Abosokai Spare Parts Dealers Association have given us some assurance that they are speaking to their members to also reduce prices. But before we leave you, every day people face different emergencies: police emergency, fire emergency, medical emergency, you name it. But many Ghanaians don't know their emergency numbers. Well, here's one you'd want to remember, in a *770 hash. Yes, *770 hash is the new EcoBank money emergency number. *770 hash gives you instant access to loans, funds transfer, utility payments, airtime and data purchases, and so much more, even without data. So there's no need to panic when you find yourself in any money emergency, because EcoBank will always come to your rescue. Dial *770# now for solutions to your money emergencies. EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank. Remember that EcoBank and Telecel are sponsors of Business Focus here on TV3. And that'll be all for today's edition, but let me say a special thank you to all our guests that came through the show. Nelson Kujo-Kwagbeji, finance and tax expert with Melbourne Capital, joining us in studio. Dr. Eric Boache-Yadrum of UPSA, financial economist. Also, we had earlier Dr. Alhaji Abbas Imoro, PRO of GPR2, Ghana Private Road Transport Union. We also had Apia Kusia Adomako, West Africa Director for CATS International Consumer Advocacy Group. And that'll be all for today's edition of the show. For more business stories, please visit our website, it's 3news.com/business. Later on News 360 at 7 p.m., we'll bring you more updates from the world of business. My name is Michael Obodu. Thank you for watching. As always, please stay safe. Catch you next week.
Business Focus is brought